To create the pleated pocket, you will create 2 box pleats and use bias tape to face the top edge. Find the pleated pocket piece, thread trace the pleat lines marked X and O. Place the pleated pocket with the right side up on the ironing table. You will use these lines to create your pleat. Fold along the X line and bring it to meet the O line in the center. Repeat on the other side. These labels should also be written on the wrong side of your fabric. Beginning on the left-hand side, carefully fold along the first X line. Be sure the pleat line is straight and bring it to meet the center line. Press along the outer pleat line to create the first half of your box pleat. Fold along the second X line, bringing it to meet the center line from the other direction. Press to complete your box pleat. The 2 sides of the box pleat should meet at the center. They should not overlap, and there should be no space between. Carefully repeat the same steps with the second box pleat. Pin each side of the pleat in place at the top and bottom. With a single thread, baste the pleats in place between the stitch line and the seam allowance. Use a single tailor's tack along each half of the pleat. This will hold the pleats closed while we sew the facing and serge around the edges. When you have finished basting the pleats closed, remove the pins. The pleats should now be held closed at the top and bottom. Serge along the sides and bottom of the pocket, removing just enough seam allowance to get a clean edge. Use the stitch line to press up the sides of the pocket. Place the pocket with the right side up on the cutting table. Cut a piece of 1/2 inch wide bias tape 7 inches long. Press it straight. Unfold one side of the bias tape. Place the bias tape along the top edge of the pleated pocket, right sides together. The unfolded edge of the bias tape should be along the cut edge of the pocket. The bias tape should be longer than the pleated pocket. Center it so that each end has about 1 inch of overhang. Match the crease line with the stitch line of the pleated pocket. Pin in place along the stitch line. The side edges should stay folded in as you pin. Set the sewing machine to stitch width 0 and stitch length 3. Place the fabric underneath the presser foot. Line up the center of the crease with the needle. Put the presser foot down. Hold the beginning threads and stitch forward 2 or 3 stitches. Back stitch 2 or 3 stitches and continue sewing along the crease line. As you approach the pleats, double check that all the layers of fabric are lying flat and in the correct direction. When you reach the edge of the pocket, backstitch 2 or 3 stitches, go forward, Move the needle into the upright position, pull the work out, and clip your threads at the end and at the beginning. Check that your stitching is straight and follows the line exactly. Then you are ready to trim the seam allowance of the pocket. Use the fabric scissors to trim the top edge of the seam allowance down to just slightly longer than the seam allowance of the bias tape. Then place the pocket with the right side up, flat on the ironing table. Press the stitching flat. Fold the bias tape out towards the seam allowance and press it flat. Turn the pocket over so the wrong side is facing up. Turn in the bias tape overhang on each side and press it so that it is flush with the folded edge. Fold the bias tape over towards the wrong side of the fabric. Fold so that the bias tape ends up just below the top edge. Press along the fold. A tiny strip of the pocket fabric should be visible on the wrong side, whereas the bias tape should not be visible at all from the right side of the pocket. Pin the bias tape down. Be sure that the ends are tucked in. With a single thread, whip stitch along the edge to hold the bias tape facing down. Try to keep your stitches even and your pricks small, as they will be visible from the right side of the pocket. Check your work from both sides as you stitch. If you find that you have taken too big of a prick, simply unthread your needle and carefully use your needle to unstitch that stitch. Rethread your needle and begin again. Be sure to tie a knot when you reach the end. You have completed the pleated pocket and are ready to work on the pocket flap.